I'm Linda McNamee, and for the next hour we are going to learn about our four-legged friends, training dogs. Wait, man's best friend. Yes, they're dogs. Apparently I think I need a little bit of training too. But anyway, thank you for tuning in. If you have a question for one of our guests this evening, you can give us a call at 781-270-9199. Or if you think of something after the fact or have a suggestion for a future topic, you can always email me at talk@bcattv.org. We have a full house this evening, so I would like to thank the staff and crew, beginning with Chris Flaherty and Corey McNeil, who are staff members who help keep everything here at BCAT running smoothly. We also have Colleen Moore, Director Extraordinaire and Editor Extraordinaire. We have Jolie Atwood, Stephanie Floridas, Liz Gillespie, Sarah, I can't read your last name, Pottle, and Marie Belanger. So they are all volunteers here who have given up their Wednesday evening to come help us out. So thank you. Now I would like to introduce my wonderful guests for this evening. We have Tyler Falconer and Mike, I'm going to screw it up. I'm not even going to try it. Mike
Wagreich.
Thank you. I should have written it phonetically. And both of you work for Canine East Dog Training,
Yes.
which is pretty much all aspects, all levels of dog training, from like, when I hear canine, I think like police dogs. And you also do some a little...
We do pet obedience, we do
okay.
behavioral problem solving, and then we have specialty training, like consultant for police departments.
Okay.
And
do you do military dogs at all?
actually, Tyler has the military background, so
cool.
he can tell you a little about that.
And when we went to check out your training, you were also training someone that had a guide dog.
Actually, that was a balanced dog.
A
Great
balanced dog,
Danes,
okay.
and the woman has issues with balancing, so her dog's
Okay.
trained to help her balance. We've trained...
Okay, so it's a service dog.
Yep, service
Okay.
dogs. We've trained dogs for children's hospital, therapy dogs, so the whole
Okay.
gamut.
Yeah, I heard like autistic people sometimes, or people with autism, oftentimes have dogs to kind of keep everything status quo.
Yep, dogs help
Yes.
out, and even like in nursing homes, a lot of times, dogs bring out good feelings from way back, and it's
Yeah.
just they're
Because
a
they're so
good
furry
thing.
and cute. Okay, well, let's back up a little bit, and before we talk about man's best friend, let's find out a little bit more about you guys. Could you give us a little background, where you grew up, how you came to the Burlington area, and what made you get into dog training?
Sure.
You guys can
Okay.
fight over
Yeah,
who goes
Mike, you can go
first.
Okay. So I was born in Hawaii, and then I grew
Why'd
up.
you come here?
I didn't have a choice when I was 5 years old, and then I grew up in New York, went to school. Talk about culture shock.
Yeah.
And then I went to school in Connecticut and then Florida, and then I ended up in New England probably about 30 years ago. And I started dog training professionally when I got up to New England. I've always been into music, played in bands. That was
Cool.
always my thing. I've different passions.
Music and dog training, they
Yeah.
just go together.
I have different passions. I rebuild hot rods, and
Cool.
dog training is one of my big passions, and that's ended up being where I make my income. So years ago, I just started calling around different trainers, seeing what was available as far as courses, and just got to know different people. Started in one guy's kennel, just shoveling and cleaning the runs and feeding and paying my dues that way, and he was teaching me, and then I just branched out from there.
Cool.
And then just anything I could get a hold of, as far as people ask, what's your method? And my method is just developed from working with different trainers.
Okay.
And a lot of it is really the European trainers who really years ago understood drives a lot better than I find the Americans did. It's just a different culture, and getting really into the dog's mind of what makes them work and what makes them tick, as opposed to like the old school military way of like, hey, this is how it's done, and we just force you to do it. It was a lot more just understanding.
Okay, now do you have to start training them as a puppy, or can you train adult dogs?
You don't have
or-
to, and our thing is we get a lot of
Okay.
the problem dogs, so if you can start a dog right from day one, around
Oh,
8
okay.
weeks, it's a good time for them to make the transition from the litter to a
Oh, okay.
household. But as trainers, we have a problem dog. Like yesterday, I actually had a dog that was from West Africa that was 3 years old, had been bounced around and had went to a behaviorist, and the behaviorist had then, one of their people who they recommended, a dog walker, the dog actually ended up biting the person pretty bad. So it was just a different method of training. So they called me, and I went in and worked with them. So that's something where, I didn't have the option of taking that dog from day one. And genetically, dogs are what their parents gave them, just like people, and then environmentally during critical imprinting periods, which is really important. This dog, whether it's neglect or abuse, and it's just learned to fend for itself. Or like I had a dog in class tonight who's going to be over 100 pounds easy. It's a Barbell African Mastiff. But the owner has started this dog from day one, and he's very social, and we're really on all these things to do.
He's a lap dog.
Yeah, just to keep things positive and to teach them, they love structure, and to teach them that there are rules, but just that timing and consistency and keeping things positive.
Cool. Okay, your turn.
All right, so I was born and raised in Burlington, Mass. I had actually known Mike.
And moved to Hawaii. No.
Yeah. So I had actually known Mike back when I was in high school. We had gone to the same gym, and I enlisted in the Navy when I was 17. I spent 4 years in the Navy as a military working dog handler, working with, any agency as far as like police departments across the country, Secret Service, and other canine handlers around the military. And I specialize in explosive detection and protection, like the patrol dog, like the bite work that you guys came out and watched us.
Oh, okay.
And so from there, when I was getting out of the Navy, I actually contacted Mike. I had about 6 months left, and asked him if I could start working with him.
Oh, cool.
And right when I got out, I contacted him, and in between then, I had gone to the fire academy and became a Burlington fireman, also while working for Mike. And so now we're here.
Now you're here. Cool. So we kind of mentioned what kinds of training. Can we break that down a little bit? Behavior training. Is this sit and heel, or is it please don't chew the mailman's leg off?
Well, the foundation for whatever area people get into, whether it's a specialized work dog or a family pet, the foundation work is what's really important, of teaching that there's rules. We go with the alpha theory of that the dogs are they're pack members. Right, and it's if you had 20 dogs here and they all wanted a piece of food, they're going to fight for it. The strongest is going to win. Might makes right, and that's just how dogs work.
Darwin was right.
So
survival of the fittest.
Just from a lot of studies, and also studies with wolves, out in Indiana, they have wolf packs that they interact with humans and they accept humans, but you can go in there on their terms and work with them. So you're really getting into that raw, primitive, hey, this is where dogs came from and how they work, and understanding that. So it's taking that and then applying it to a domestic situation. So we teach them where their place is within the family, and it's balance where there are rules, and dogs have different drives, like jumping, for instance. Yeah, when they're jumping on your grandmother when they come in the door and knock her down, it's a problem, but when they're jumping after a Frisbee, that's fine. Chewing the kids' legs and pants and stuff like that, that's a problem. But if they're chewing on
my new shoes!
Exactly. But if they're chewing on a toy, then that's okay. So it's channeling these drives into this
teaching
domestic
them
situation.
Appropriateness.
Correct. Yep. And that's the pet obedience, and then the police dogs, they're trained to do other things, like to find drugs or to take the bad guy down. So you're tapping into these things that dogs naturally do, and you take the appropriate dog that's good for that job, and just showing them there's a time and place for everything, but also giving them balance where, sometimes the control is stressful, but they need that time to let go and run and play and jump, so you just channel onto what's appropriate.
Cool. Well, I just found out that the search and rescue clip, because we actually did come out and see some of your training. So there is a clip that's available, and maybe you guys can kind of talk us through what's involved in the training, what are you doing, and, you know, trying to not fix the behaviors, but have the dog
Mold them.
understand the different behaviors. Like, you know, do not attack grandma, but go attack this evil person that also knocked over grandma.
Right.
So, Colleen, can we take a look at that clip? Please? Okay, you're suiting up. Probably because you do not want to. How powerful are these dogs?
They're very powerful. They can range anywhere up to 700 pounds per square inch on their bite.
Wow.
So I'm very grateful for that suit. It's actually brand new.
And I'm very grateful for Tyler because he's a young buck who was, when I was in my 20s, I was doing the hits, and now I'm getting older, and I enjoy having him around.
Well, as I was also impressed because it was like 90 degrees that day.
Yeah, it was a little warm.
Okay, so who's our canine friend there?
That is Joby.
Joby.
Yeah, this is Joby. He's a year-old Belgian Malinois. It's a very high-drive dog. They're real common in military and police. Not for everybody. It's always button heads with him of, you know, the control. He just wants to go, go, go. Tyler has a female Malinois, a couple months younger, Nala, same thing. So this is taking that hunting prey drive mixed in with defense drive to fight the bad guy, but it's on our terms where when it's time to fight, you go at it, and then when it's time to stop, you stop. And the control comes first. We're real adamant about that as far as having that control. So now I'm going to take him off the bite.
Because he doesn't look like he wanted to let go there for a
Yep.
while.
No.
But he didn't, and then when I told him, he let go, and now I told him to come back to me and to lay down. So I want the obedience to override everything, and that's one thing that we really do. We see a lot of working dogs where there's poor control, and you can't have that. It's only going to get you into trouble.
So a situation like
Joby
this.
doesn't mind getting like flipped over your shoulder like that?
Well, Mike and I have been training that ever since he was probably about 3 months old.
Okay.
Some dogs, if they haven't been trained in it, some of them may let go of the bite. But Mike and I had stressed, you know, training that and setting Joby up for success in a situation where if that did ever happen, that he would be comfortable with it and he would stay on the bite.
Okay. Look,
And
Daddy, look
that's
what I
in
found.
realistic scenarios with police departments.
Okay.
You're going to have people fighting the dog, you know,
Okay.
people whacked out on some drugs. You don't know the dog's going to, there's things that the dogs are going to see as far as fighting and challenge. So this is what we train for. So when we demo a dog, he's used to that. You know, it's not just like there's sport dogs where it's a sterile thing. Every time the bad guy stops, the dog stops biting. Every time he goes, he bites. And that's fine for sport, for points, but for realistic protection or police work, it's different.
life.
Things come out of left field. So like Tyler was saying, we do a lot of that desensitizing the dogs so they just come through anything.
So how do they know, like, who to
It's on command.
okay.
Yeah, we gave them a command, and they get equipment
What if the
associated.
bad guy has like a nice juicy steak?
Well, that's something where you can poison-proof the dog or teach them to ignore.
Oh, okay.
So that's. Did you guys in the military do any stuff like that with to ignore certain things or?
More so proofing them off the equipment and not so much like poison proofing.
Yeah.
Okay. What is poison proofing? You don't really poison
yeah,
the dog.
no.
That's what happens is I had an account years ago down in Roxbury, Dorchester area. It was a car lot that did repos,
Okay.
and they had 3 dogs, and they were getting broken into like multiple times. They had
Okay, 'cause
place
people
had
want their
razor
cars
wire
back.
and everything.
Yeah, okay.
But people would taunt the dogs with meat that had poison in it to try to,
Oh.
or had crack in it to try to poison the dog. So we teach the dogs to not take that.
Okay.
That's what poison proofing is. But what
Okay.
Tyler said as far as equipment, just because the guy has a suit on or the sleeve doesn't mean it's time to work. Where we
okay.
try to mix things up where the person could have no equipment on and we get them to show aggression. Obviously, we can't have them bite the bad guy, train or decoy because
Okay.
he'll get hurt. But it's trying to set up all these types of things like that.
Okay.
You
Set
know, to
up
make
all
it
the different scenarios.
to make it
and-
realistic. Yeah, but these dogs are taught to bite on command.
Wow.
And then some police departments, they'll do attack on handler. If someone attacks the handler, then the dog will automatically go. There's good and bad of everything. If the handler's knocked out, I've heard stories where he was knocked out, and then the other handlers couldn't come to help him, or the medical guys couldn't come to help him because he was protecting the dog. So there's different SOPs that departments have, and we just train to help the agency to point out different things and go to whatever their standards are.
Okay. Now, when we were there watching you guys, and also I had heard that the police dogs do not follow English commands. They usually speak German or other languages. Did Joby, he doesn't speak, but does he understand a different language
Yeah,
that you use?
he's trained in German.
Okay.
And it's not that they don't listen to English. It's just 20 years ago, very few
Not
dogs
everybody spoke.
Yeah, the German commands were kind of different. Now all the departments do it. A lot of them do it in French or Czech.
Okay.
English too. You could use whatever term you want. It's just being consistent. But it is real popular now, where a while ago it wasn't as popular here. We like English and German because it's one syllable commands. Some of the other language you have to say so many syllables to get the word out.
Welsh, it's this long and no vowels.
Exactly. In the military, what did you guys use?
It was both. My dog Arco, he was English, but I had other dogs. We had a dog that spoke English, Dutch, and German, just understood.
Because I heard that was because if you were in this area, not a lot of people speak German.
Well, the working crowd, everyone does it. A lot of people
that way
do
the
it.
dog would only obey your commands.
Yeah, but then you go further with it, where you just teach your dog to ignore other people. So if it's something where I've had 2 dogs that were in English years ago, and people would tell them a command, and they were taught to ignore them. So they just wouldn't listen to me. And people would be like, your dog's stuck up, doesn't listen to me. He's like, no, he's been trained for that. But then the other thing is
he's really smart. He doesn't want to talk to you.
Yeah. So, but I have nieces around and, young kids, and they all want to drill the sitter, so they're the casual English for them. And then they listen to me on the precise, the precise other
So your
commands.
nieces, okay, fine, I'll entertain you, I'll sit, I'll roll over.
Yeah, because
I'll
3-year-old,
shake your hand.
they'll be just drilling it, so it just would get old. So.
Okay.
Yep.
I had another thought, and it just escaped me.
About the language, or?
I don't know. Here, what? You were talking about how Joby is allowed to play with your nieces and nephews and very casual. Now, I had heard police dogs, if they are a police dog, they don't really have playtime at the owner's house.
It depends. Tyler will tell you what the military does, and then maybe I'll point out some things that some local departments do as far as the setup with the kennels and everything.
Yeah, and as far as the military, the dog always had to stay on base.
Okay.
It was more of a liability issue.
Okay.
But there were times that I did get to take my dog home due to, he that injured paw or something, and he needed to be monitored 24 hours. For our theory was that, when we grabbed our dogs, it was time to go to work.
Okay.
And so I don't know how the other police departments do it. As far as I know, that
a lot
they
of
have
the times
kennel.
the dogs are kenneled, because if you think about it, if they're playing with the kids all day, then it's time to go do their shift. The dogs will be conked out from playing. So often they're in families and they're social and they're part of the pack family. Where with Joby, he's not an official police dog. He's a demo dog, but he's also a pet. So he, I do a lot of demos with kids and just showing dogs that are well behaved and playful. This is another aspect that he does, is the work. So in his case, he has a lot more freedom than a lot of the working dogs do, because you don't want to just tire him out all day. And then when it's time to go, they're just going to sleep in the cruiser all day. So it depends on whatever the department's rules are. And often nowadays, how it is that the dogs are social. They're they're included in the family, and but they have their own kennel. Their time to rest and hang out, and the handler really oversees a lot of what's going on, where it's, the dog's just not doing whatever, either getting sloppy on commands or getting into trouble, things like that. And it depends on the dog too, as far as if you have a dog that's more defensive, that's in a situation where the dog is a much stronger harder, serious dog, like a prison environment.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
those dogs, you want them to be kind of untrusting and serious, where, you know, you take like Joe P. from Burlington, his dog's very social. You know, he does a lot of demos with kids and stuff, so, you know, Havoc's just a sweetheart. People can pat him and play with him,
Okay.
and then when it's time to do the work, it's time to do the work. So it just depends on
Okay.
what where the
Because
dogs
I know
are.
like a lot of service dogs are like, don't touch the service dog.
Well,
They're
well,
working.
with that,
and-
sometimes it's just because they're working and everyone
Yeah.
wants to pet them. So, like
Okay.
Lynn, who was with the dog that
Okay.
you saw at class, you know, the dog's there to help her to do a purpose. So, if the
Okay.
dog's getting distracted and playing with everyone, you know, that's going to
Yeah.
just get in the way. Where the dog has its time for free time and playtime, but that's when
Okay.
Lynn says so.
Because you want dogs to have fun.
Oh,
too.
yeah, they
No,
need
definitely.
that, yep.
Okay. Now back to the military or police dogs. How long does it take to train them?
Well, the military, the main hub of the military working dogs is in
Okay.
Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio.
Okay.
And basically what they do is they get the dogs as puppies from all over the place. And
Okay.
throughout the process of, I want to say, 6 months, these trainers get these dogs. And they have 6 months to train 6 dogs, and whatever dogs don't make it through the 6 months, they give them a little extra time,
Okay.
and then they'll adopt them out. There's such a high demand for the dogs, especially because they're so effective, you know, overseas and stateside, that you know, the military just wants.
Now, did you play a role in the training of your dog when you were in the military?
We get our dogs at a baseline level,
Okay.
and then it was our responsibility to build them up from there.
Okay.
Whereas with Mike,
So they
I
got them
have-
trained like the core curriculum, and then
Yes.
you got them like
Yes.
specialized. Okay.
And there's different departments, like Sheriff's Department, they have their program. Boston Police has theirs.
Okay.
When I did work with the state police in the 90s, they had an 18-week program. This was Mass State Police.
Okay.
So you took a dog who was like a year and a half to 3 years old that already had the potential to get right into the work, went through all the puppy
Okay.
building stuff, and then they usually did the patrol utility, which was the obedience, the tracking, and the protection work. And it was usually like full days for 18 weeks. And
Wow.
they'd certify by the end of that. And then afterwards, they would usually put the drug certification. New Hampshire State Police,
Oh, okay.
I don't remember exactly how many weeks their program was. I think it was a little bit less. But that was, you know, just with that agency, it decided to do and what works for them. So, you know, different agencies do different things.
Okay. So after that, like core curriculum, how long did you have to train? To be specific.
The trainers had 6 months, and then
Okay.
when we received the dogs, we had annual certifications, and
Okay.
so we had certain standards that we had to meet, and it fell on us and not the dogs, because the dogs met those check marks
Oh,
when
okay.
when they were, you know, given to us. So we were just in charge of advancing them.
Okay. Now, where did you get that training?
At Lackland Air Force
Okay,
Base
so
in
they-
San Antonio. It was
okay.
about a 3-month school,
Oh,
3-month-long
cool.
school, and then, you know, from there I went to Fallon, Nevada, and then continued on from there.
Okay, so military kind of starts with puppies, and you said if they don't make the cut, then they're adopted out.
Yes.
How long is a career for an animal?
For us, when the dog reached 8 years old,
Okay.
it was no longer allowed to do any more bite work, but it was still good to do detection. You start to
Okay.
see physical changes in the dogs. The dogs start missing odor, like a little bit more,
Okay.
and then that's usually when it'll be retired out.
Okay.
And the dog has to pass a series of tests in order to be adopted out.
Okay. What are they testing for?
Well, just like aggression, you know,
Okay.
somebody that doesn't know the dog will go grab the food from it while it's eating, and just making sure that the
Okay.
dog will be okay to be out in the general
Be a pet
public. Yes.
and not. Okay. Now, if you had worked with a particular dog, do you get like first choice to adopt him?
Yes,
Or,
yes,
okay.
you get first choice.
And it was never like that way back. You know, we talk about guys in
Okay.
Vietnam and stuff who
We even hear
they-
stories even now.
the dogs
about
were just
how-
tools, and you know, the guys couldn't take them. And then there's programs that, you know, that a lot of good programs to try to get these dogs back to their handlers or to get placed, because they did their job, and if you can recondition them to if they're safe to come back into like a pet kind of situation to live out the rest of their lives,
Okay.
it's fair.
Now, I had heard stories before, but just, for the audience who might be interested, or maybe I was misinformed, you talked about dogs that don't make the cut. How do you tell? What are some of the things that you're looking for that the dogs don't meet the expectations?
Well, Mike and Mike would know some of this as well. What happens is you may find a dog that's great in, patrol and bite work and protection, but it lacks that drive for, sniffing drugs or explosives. Okay. And so, they call them dual-purpose dogs. Dual-purpose dogs are what you want. You want a dog that's able to multitask and not do one or the other. So, so the dog may be, very strong in one and not the other, and it just doesn't make the cut and would be better suited somewhere else.
Or
and
a
with
dog
puppies,
who might be afraid
you
of
can
loud
only
noises or something.
Yeah, with puppies, you're seeing potential. This dog at 10 weeks or 12 weeks, potential is there, but as they develop, it might not develop the right way. So that's where I have a good friend, Matt, who's in Rhode Island, who gets dogs from all over the world for all different agencies. And with his breeding program, he'll foster them out to people that work with him just to raise the puppy in a positive environment and to do certain things to expose the pups, that they possibly would see. And then if they find in that time, what, this dog is just too laid back or would be better as a pet, then that's where they weed them out. So it's some of the agencies or departments don't have that luxury where they either have to go with a donated dog and it's like, oh, this dog is all we have to work with. So it's different,
That seems kind of dangerous.
Well,
for
but
the
old way was, they're expensive and a lot of times they don't
Yeah.
have the funds. So I've worked with guys in the past who, oh, so-and-so's dog bit someone, so he'd be a good police dog. It's like, no, not necessarily. Why did he bite someone? So that's my job, is to test and see what's going on. But some of these towns, they were just, this is what you have, and it's like, do the best that you can with it. So that's where, if you, in a perfect world where you can pick and choose and you have the funds, then you can really do the tests and, hey, this is what the dog is, this is what it's going to cost, but we know what it is, where some departments don't always have that luxury.
Yeah. And sometimes it really does work out well. My dog Arco was actually donated, and he was a test dog, they called it. He was a tactical explosive detector dog.
Okay.
Primarily trained just to find bombs in the ground, IEDs.
Oh, okay.
And so my job was to teach him to be able to locate it in buildings and everything as well. So the company that donated the dog to the military just didn't have the time and resources to spend on the dog. So, I received the dog and I had the time and I was able to help him, and he turned out to be an unbelievable dog.
Or some of the shelter dogs, they were like into the shelter because they were just crazy, running around, bouncing off the walls, always playing with their ball, and the people didn't like that, where that dog could be potentially a great detection dog, for drug work or something, where he lives for that ball. That's his ticket to the reward. And if he's confident and healthy and agile, it's like they're out there. It's, and there's a lot of good programs where, the people will go into shelter looking at dogs for potentially doing the work, and there's a lot of great ones that are there.
Now, I've been informed that a second clip is available, and I think it's the one where you guys are teaching the dogs to obey you and listen to your commands. So let's take a look at that clip, and then if you guys can kind of walk me through what's going on in the video again, that would be awesome.
So that handsome guy is Tyler with Nala, and there's Joby doing a little photo bomb across the screen. Now what we're doing is I'm playing with Joby while Tyler's having Nala in a down. So this is a distraction. I'm playing Frisbee. Now I just must have told him to stay. So even though he wants a Frisbee, he has to listen to me. That has to override. And then when what we call free time him or release him from the formal work, then he can play. So I'm kind of, making it hard for him. you're in a downstay, no matter what's going on, that comes first.
See the frisbee? See the nice frisbee? You can't have it.
And then now I free time him,
okay.
so now we can play. And then Tyler was
Okay.
having Nala down.
Do you ever take those dogs to the dog park?
The thing with dog parks, it's you got to watch it because there's some dogs that shouldn't be there,
Okay.
and it's
Yeah.
not a controlled
like that is
situation. So
Frozen.
we've been in situations that where they play, and in our group classes, which we
Okay.
have interaction
we'll
and
take
playing
a-
throughout that, but it's very controlled.
Okay.
Right here, I have Nala and Mike stay at the same time. It's advanced.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
that's-
there's a little problem with the video
Yeah.
clip.
But so just what we were seeing before, it's more advanced obedience
Okay.
where, we originally taught the dog the command, then we trained it, and then we're doing what's called proofing,
Okay.
where we're throwing a lot of distractions, making it hard for the dog. So the dog's, perfecting
Oh,
the
okay.
command. And that actually is the most important part of all the specialized training that Mike and I do.
And that's a great point that Tyler said, where you have to teach the dog what's expected of them first. You have to show them what the sit means.
Oh, okay.
Once they know what it means, then it's training, where now you have to sit with all the distractions, and then you notch it up and make it more difficult. But so many people, like the old school, was you just take a dog and you just like force them into the sit, but the dog doesn't understand what you're doing. You have to
Okay.
make it clear of what you're trying to communicate to them.
Now, when you're training the dog, is it like, do you have like the little treats like they do at, for seals where they do something nice and you give them a little,
Well, you want to get into
Kibble
the
or-
motivation and compulsion?
So there's two different types of training. There's motivation and
Okay.
compulsion. So, if there's a dog that's not exactly enthusiastic in the training
Okay.
or just yet, we'll use food to motivate him.
oh,
But
okay.
ultimately, what we want is for the dog to work for your praise.
Okay.
And then there's also compulsion where
So
there's
the dog doesn't get
consequences. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there's compulsion where there's consequences, whether they be positive or negative. But it's all about holding the dog accountable. So
Okay.
you tell the dog to sit, the dog sits. He gets praise from you. If he doesn't, then he gets corrected.
And the correction's based on how the mother would correct the pup. She'd grab him by the neck, shake him, pin him down. Or when dogs fight, or an alpha dog, how we would roll the other dog. So it's based on that.
Okay.
And with a young puppy,
So it's more behavioral.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And we'll use food, like say a young puppy, to teach what come means. He's focused on the food, he wants it. You say come, he comes to you, gets the food. So he's starting to learn that way and associate that command. So that's fine for foundation work, but then what happens when that squirrel that's over here means more than the food? So then we would correct him for going after the squirrel.
Squirrel.
And then he learns, all right, that option's taken away, but now when I come back to you, then you get the reward, whether it's food or just praise. So it's all balanced that way. And some dogs have a high food drive, they live for it. Right now there's, the clicker operant conditioning, it's all food, there's no corrections, and we find it's limited, where if the dog wants that rabbit more than he wants the food, then how are you going to stop him? And I always say to people, like, if I gave you, or say if I put like a $50 bill, you're going to take it because it's going to represent buying $50 worth of things unless I stop you somehow. And the theory with some of the reward people, like, oh, well, then I would use a $100 bill to have you not take the $50 bill. So then I say,
To make
okay,
it more attractive than the squirrel.
yeah, but I'm like, all right, take the biggest bill. If there's $1 million bill and it's the biggest that you can have, but there's something else that, what's going to make you not take it? So it's either got to be something that's you want more, but if that's the most important thing, then it has to be stopped with a correction.
Yeah,
Just like
it's a
people
$50
driving.
bill, but there's, a hot fudge sundae
Yeah.
over here and I'm starving,
Right, or people driving. It's like, you speed and you got to get to work, but that red light's a correction. That represents maybe getting in trouble or getting a fine. So that's keeping
Or
order.
getting killed.
Yeah, exactly. So
Now, when you're talking about training the dogs and behavior and the motivation behind it, do you find that certain breeds of dogs work better one way than another? And
Yeah.
what kind of dogs do you work with?
yeah, well, that's where like with the working dogs. Like, did you guys work mostly Malinois shepherds?
Yes.
You know, they're just bred,
Okay.
and it's not that all of them are like that. You know, there's show lines, there's different,
Okay.
but
But
those
they're more
dogs
likely
typically
than not.
they just have
Yeah.
certain
You
drives.
probably don't want to have a poodle as a military dog or
Well,
a Shih Tzu or
actually,
something.
California years ago
Really?
introduced them, and I've had poodles doing protection. They don't
Okay.
have the visual deterrence, but they could be. Some of them can be pretty tough. You'd be
Yeah.
surprised. And it's in
Okay, maybe a Chihuahua then.
Yeah.
yeah, but it's in general where like typical golden retriever that's from a good breeding stock and is, you know, sound is just a easy, fun, happy dog,
Yeah.
playful. But I've had golden retrievers that have put people in hospitals for whatever went wrong, whether it was a genetic thing
Wow.
or environmentally the dogs were
Wow.
abused. So
Okay.
that's not typical where certain breeds are more prone to things, and it's breed-specific characteristics. They're breed for certain things. Huskies were bred to be out in the tundra pulling sleds and being loudmouths, so they're not the easiest domestic pet because they typically pull and they're very headstrong. Terriers, the word terra, not like terrorist, but terra from earth, T-E-R-R-A.
Okay.
They were bred to go after rodents. So some of these, like I had a West Highland Terrier the other day, you know, real headstrong, challenge the owner. But those dogs, you know, they're bred to like go after rats and not to be wimpy and to, you know, so it's breed specific characteristics. So yeah, some are easier in general. Some don't have the drives you're looking for, but within each breed you can have different ones. It's not every lab is this way or
Well,
every
no, I
Doberman's
understand
this way.
that. I mean, every human is, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We actually had a 9-pound Jack Russell Terrier that was trained in drug detection, and
Really?
we actually trained him in like bite work, taught him to attack, and he was a little spitfire.
They could
he
be
was
tenacious
awesome.
little dogs, what they were bred for. You
Yeah.
know,
That's true,
fighting a
okay.
rat, it's not an easy thing, I'm sure, so
Yeah.
they got to be tough.
Yeah.
But then you see like Hollywood ruins dogs, or these like, oh wow, like the Dalmatians, what a cute dog, or the, you know, Jack Russell's on a show and it's cute. It's like, it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, people,
I heard Dalmatians are kind of hyper.
well, that 101 Dalmatians, really, everybody wanted them after that. And it's
Yeah.
not, I don't see it as much now, but it just, they became so popular. People were starting to what we call backyard breed, where irresponsible breeders, just to make a buck, just breeding whatever slightly resembled a Dalmatian. And there was just a lot of issues with the dog, so.
Okay. Now, a while back in our conversation, you were talking about, you know, companies donating the police dogs, and how much would a police dog or any type of dog, how much does it cost to train them? Ballpark.
It depends, because a lot of times, like through Lackland, the agencies, they don't, do they pay them, or how does that work as far as, like, police can go there as well as the military, or, you know?
Or service dogs, or, because I heard like some service dogs are very expensive.
It depends if it's a private trainer or if say, like Joe P, I believe he certifies with Boston, so that's something that they work out where I'm not sure if the town pays them or if it's just that's something that Boston offers where, you know, if we get clients who want a personal protection dog and they want them to a certain level, then, you know, we have to be compensated for the dog and for the time, stuff like that. So there's a gamut. You know, I know people who have had free dogs that they adopted that were awesome dogs, and they just lucked out to people that have spent over 30 grand for a dog.
Wow.
So.
Yeah. And I know at the end of a service dog or a military working dog's life, they're worth about 100 grand.
Wow.
With all the training, you know, and that's training the handler also. That just adds into the equation. So yeah, it's
I just want to keep it.
yeah.
Puppies are all dogs are puppies to me. But so, can we talk a little bit about service dogs? Do you feel comfortable talking?
Sure.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Because I actually encountered someone who decided to train her own service dog as opposed to having a professional train them. What are the requirements to train a service dog?
Well, what's your definition of service dog?
So, like the balance dog that we were talking about, or somebody to sense an epileptic,
Right.
or not a seeing eye dog, but like the autism dogs or something.
Well, there's just different levels. Some dogs are
Okay.
just like companion service, where it's just you know,
Okay.
maybe if people are I don't know if they're nervous or anxious, and maybe the dog is calm, you know, is
Okay.
calming, and that could just be a dog that's just a well-behaved dog that's, you know, kind of mellow and social and doesn't have issues with
Okay.
other dogs or with aggression, that may have some basic foundation obedience. That's as far as you would need to go with a dog like
Okay.
that, where, you know, that's maybe the lesser training scale, where then, you know, you go to a dog that has to indicate if there's a chemical change in someone who's, you know, if there's whether it's like a
diabetic
diabetic
or-
episode or
Okay.
something like that, where it's kind of more crucial, where, you know, that's a life and death situation, so the dog has to really be on its game.
Okay.
Just like with, we've talked about that with the drugs and the explosives, where drug dogs, you know, you miss a find or whatever in a school, it's like, yeah, that's not great, but it's not the end of the world. Where you miss an explosive on a
Explosive,
plane,
yeah.
that's a whole, brings it to a whole different level.
Could be a little.
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know.
so there's different levels of that, and as far as, you know, everybody's a trainer, and it's like, it's, you know, you go to like the, oh, old Uncle Joe from Kentucky, I've been training dogs all my life, you know, I've been feeding them chicken bones all my life, and it's like, yeah, that might have worked for you, but with studies, and it's really not the safest thing. But who's to say what's right or wrong? It's not an exact science. We're open with our method. If we have someone who comes to us and they're doing something that works already that might be a different way than we do it, I'm not going to fix it if it's not broken.
Okay.
We may give suggestions, and most of the time there is an issue, and that's from the experience. Tyler and I will be like, you know what, let's try this. We've seen with this dog, or let's try this. There's no one way to get to that point. There's different things, and you got to be open. So if someone's doing something the right way,
Okay.
and it's working, then whatever they're doing is right. You know,
Because I was also thinking of the aspect of, you know, retail establishments or restaurants or, you know, businesses saying service dogs only. So what is to prevent me from bringing my, you know, mixed
Right.
breed that I got at a shelter
yeah.
into an establishment and say, oh yeah, it's a service dog.
Well, now with society, I mean, you get like service turtles and service chickens. You know, it's like, well, this animal is
Service
like
pigs.
helps me with whatever. So it's just kind of like some gray area going on there, and
okay.
I just it just depends on who's certifying. You know, who's a certifying organization,
okay.
and what are they accepting. So there's just different levels of. It's kind of becoming a broad term of service dog. That's why I say for what
Oh,
application.
okay.
Yeah, and there's service dogs, there's emotional support, and then there's therapy dogs, and each one of those three things offers different, you know, advantages. Or so like a service dog is allowed everywhere, you know, can't be discriminated in housing or on the planes, allowed in restaurants, except for if it's a private club that doesn't allow dogs, they have the right to refuse because they're private.
Okay.
But the second they open up to the public, they fall under the ADA.
Got
And
it.
that's what makes the service dog the, you know, the top out of all those.
Okay. Now, is there like a relicensing that you have to go if you have a service dog?
Depends on the organization, but like with the police dogs, whether it's the yearly or 6-month certification,
Okay.
you know, that's where if you have a legit, you know, honest kind of organization, they do recertify because, you know, you have to test. There's changes throughout the dog's life as far as the training has to stay on, and there could be some physical thing going on. So there are recertifications, which is
Okay.
important.
Now, I think we have the obey clip
Okay.
reset,
Okay.
and hopefully we won't freeze again.
Yeah.
Colleen, can we take a look at that again? Okay. This is back at the beginning. Yep. There's Joby photobombing. Now, does Joby have like a favorite toy?
He likes pretty much anything that rolls or flies.
squirrel.
He loves frisbees. He just damages them. He just goes through me so strong.
Yeah, I noticed that
So
one
I,
that
I
you
like
had
the
there
rubber
was-
like Kong toys. It's rubber and it's a little easier on his mouth. It's just a safer toy. And I'll use training toys, but as a chew toy, he would rip this up in a minute. So it's not a chew toy. It's a play toy like with training.
It looked well loved, if I remember correctly.
Okay, so now what we're doing is Tyler is, doing the obedience, even though he has a Frisbee. And then when he says so, then he'll let Nala play, and then I'll have Joby in the down. So what Tyler's showing there is, even though the Frisbee's over there, we just called her. You have to come to me if I tell you. But we balance it where then they get that time when they can play.
So is that Joby waiting up?
Yep, so that's
Okay.
Joby. He was in a downstay while Tyler was doing his thing with Nala.
Okay. Got a couple little odds here. We're jumping around a little bit. Oh, okay. Now, did you tell her to lie down?
Yes.
Okay. I just saw the arm go up, so I wasn't sure if it was just like a stay or...
And the reason why we do those with the hand commands is, if, say, I was 20 feet away from Nala and the sun was in her eyes, she could make out my silhouette where I raise my hand and she knows to down.
We like
Okay.
them to respond with a voice command and or a visual hand command. And then here we have, the kids running around, and even though the kids are running around, you're in a down stay right now
Okay.
until we release you and say you can go play with
As
them.
long as they don't step on the dog. So do the dogs ever, not necessarily regress, but slip because they really want, but I really want to play with the Frisbee?
Oh yeah,
Oh, yes.
it's always
Yeah.
it's button heads, and
That's my
with our
favorite
dogs,
one.
that's the breed. Like Tyler and I make a joke. We're like, why didn't we get some other type of breed?
Or
why do we
like-
get these meatheads? Because it's
Yeah.
always who's gonna run the show? But
Okay.
that's what it is with having a high drive dog.
Because I'm also thinking, if you tell Nala to stay and you throw the Frisbee and you tell Nala to go, but then Joby goes and gets it first, and then,
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's where we
Oh,
then
okay.
we bring them back to show them what's appropriate,
Mhm.
and then believe me, they have plenty of playtime, and
Yeah.
the two of them are buddies. They're, it's like having two little kids that are always wrestling and outdoing each other. She holds her own. Nala's.
Yeah,
She's a tough cookie.
Yeah.
Yeah, she is.
Okay, now we had, not sure if the clips will be ready because we only have about 10 minutes left, believe it
Oh,
or
wow.
not. Now, when you dressed up in the big suit, it was like Joby attacked this person. When it's a search and rescue, the dog can't see the target. So how do you go about training a dog for a search and rescue if somebody's lost in the woods or lost in the mountains or something?
Well, typically, search and rescue, there's no aggression involved. It's a friendly find. So if you had a hunter who was injured, or like an Alzheimer patient that had wandered off and was out there, or
Or the three
a
people
kid that got lost or
going
something.
in the woods and going off the trail.
Right,
And,
right. With that, I handled search and rescue dogs for 16 years as a handler with the DEM, which is now DCR, the Park
Okay.
Rangers, as a civilian, and also a couple other groups that were out of New Hampshire and Mass. And you have the dogs that are like the FEMA dogs, the dogs that we
Okay.
work with that were two of the firefighters were actually the first dogs that responded to the World Trade Center.
Oh,
Those
okay.
are the rubble collapse.
Okay.
So those dogs, it's usually an area that's not a couple miles of woods where it might be contained to a block or a building, like the
Okay.
Worcester fire, that type of thing.
Right.
Where you might have a pile of rubble and the dogs scent and indicate where they're getting the strongest scent. So someone could be 10 feet below the rubble. The
Okay.
dog will get the closest that they can, and then that's the indication that the handlers or the other team members, now it's time to dig there. Okay?
Okay.
Because that's where the source is coming from.
And they can just smell
They
human.
go
You don't
for
have
human
to
scent.
show them a
Yep.
sock or something.
Well, that's scent discrimination. So, if you had,
Okay.
there's tracking dogs. Say if you had
Okay.
someone stole a car, they crashed, and then they bailed. Typically, a police department, you would cordon the area off, set up a perimeter. If you can
Okay.
get a tracking dog in there, whether
Okay,
it's
so it's not the same kind of dog?
no, that's following the
okay.
path that the person went. So whether it's if you have a scent article like a hat or something, this is the scent you concentrate on.
Okay.
Typically, you don't have that, so it's just whatever the least or the latest disturbance of crushed vegetation. And as we're sitting here, we're giving off rafts, which is microbacterial particles. So they scent that, but that's where it's a contained situation. And if you can get a tracking dog in there, that's where that it has its advantage. what happens if you had a lost kid and there's 1,000 volunteers and it's a day later and there's all these scents? That's typically where you try to pull out as many people out of the area, and you get the air scenting dogs. So they cover a big area and they find the source of what's left there, whether it's, you know, deceased or live, and then they indicate to the handler that, hey, I find the person. But those dogs are they just go, they, you know, see the person, then they go back to the handler and bring them back. So it's not aggression work. It's just your job is, your ticket to the reward is by going and finding that person, coming back, letting me know you found them, and then bringing me back to them.
Dog.
That's the typical air scenting dog.
Air scenting dog.
Tracking dog is the typical when you see the handler with a 30-foot line, whether it's the bloodhounds or the shepherds following the dog. That they're just following the basic path. And it's like tracking, trailing. Tracking is the ground scent, or trailing, and you get an air scent also too mixed. So you have sport tracking where it's very precise, where you could have someone does this pattern and they want the dog to do that pattern. If a police officer was chasing someone and the guy went like this, you want the dog to just cut corners and get to him quickly. So there's different applications, but tracking is basically following the path that someone went, where air scenting is just finding the source of human scent in a huge area.
And how dogs' noses work is they have what's called olfactory sensory receptors. And so how you think of it is, think of pizza. Now, when we smell pizza, we're just, there's pizza. But how their nose works is they can smell, you know, the flour, the pepperoni, the cheese, or anything that you put on that pizza, they break it down. And every human has a different scent. What is it, sepum? That we give, I think it's called sepum, the scent that we give off. And so dogs have the ability to distinguish between people, you know, so even though there's 100 people in a field, if you had given the dog a certain scent, they have the ability to differentiate between the scents.
How do you find this stuff out? Like, the dog smells.
Oh, there's studies and tests.
I can't tell you.
You just got to do the homework.
Yeah, work with people. People have been doing this and done tests.
Wow.
And then you test things and you find what works and what doesn't work. You know, typically, like with the drug dogs, there's all tricks that people get to try to throw the dogs off, where
putting it in the coffee.
And then for a while they were using actual dog, like bones, not treat bones, but from dogs that were deceased. And for some reason, you know, they put that around to try to throw off, or like shark repellent, or like the Bounty clothes dryer things. They're using all these different things. So with training, we're like, all right, let's put it in there then, and we'll see if there is a problem. And we're teaching the dog to be specific on just the scent, so they're honest. The other thing is, like, you go to hide the drug, and the dog's getting the scent picture of your smell with the drug. So is he really going after the drug, or is he going after your smell? So that's where we do things with, like, sterile, using forceps, put the drugs in so there's no human scent, or wrapping up the reward that he gets if it's with a drug, like watching that it's not just tape that he's smelling, sometimes with string. You know, sometimes he would hide it. So you do all these different things to proof the dog, where you know that he's not hitting on something else, he's hitting on what you want him to hit on.
And smelling the drug does not make him
they don't go in contact. The old school is, you took the dog on drugs. That's just like a myth, where no, they smell the smell, and they learn that their ticket to indicate is their ticket to get their reward, which is usually their ball, or if it's a tug toy or something, is by indicating where that smell is, letting the handler know. Then once they do that job, then they get the reward.
Now, if a dog is good at smelling one thing, are they potentially good at
like with drugs, you know, or bombs, they do multiple.
But could a bomb sniffing dog also find a person buried in?
You could, but then you're starting to just spread too thin, you know, so you can have multiple purpose dogs, but
and you want to be careful with that too. They don't train bomb dogs and drug dogs. They don't train one dog in both, because if the dog responds, how do you know what you're dealing with? And so,
like the Mass State Police, I believe, like the arson dogs, just train on accelerant. That they don't do any of the other work. That's just their purpose. You know, so it's just real
Hadn't
specific.
thought of that. I mean,
And then there's other like the multi-purpose drug and patrol utility. So they're doing the control work, the bite work, aggression. They're doing the tracking, and then they're also doing maybe article finds, like finding an article like a
Okay.
lost thing or a weapon or something,
Wow.
and drugs. So they can
Those
be
dogs need
multi-trained.
bonus kibble.
Yeah.
They do a lot.
Yeah.
So I think we might have the search clip
Okay.
ready by now. I was told. Oh, okay.
Okay, so what we're doing here, it's the chain of going to the victim, okay, the quote unquote victim
lost
or lost
person.
person. Okay, just going to him, coming back to the handler,
Okay.
letting me know that he's found them, and our
Jimmy's
indication is
fallen
the
in
bark.
the well.
Okay, so this is a bark indication, so it's real clear. Hey, I found him, and then bring me back to him, and then that's your ticket to get your toy. You know, them going out and finding the people, that's easy. Dogs have been doing that for years to find their food and stuff. It's the chain of finding them, coming back to us, letting us know, indicate that you found them,
Okay.
and then bring them back. So now we're doing the same with Nala.
Do dogs ever get lost?
Now with here, she got, this is in the beginning stage of the training, so she was a little confused, went back to Tyler, so we're helping her with the chain. Oh yeah, dogs do get lost, and that's embarrassing. My search dog got lost, we gotta go look for our search dog. It happens.
See, because when you were doing this at that time, I'm like, okay, why is she running all over the place? But now I get it.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is just, and then we take this to, you could have an 8-hour problem where someone's hiding for 8 hours and we're doing like a couple square miles,
okay.
and you're out there all day. But this is the basic chain of events of once you find the person, come back to me, indicate, let me know you found them, bring me back to them, and then you get the playtime.
Okay.
And everything we do, whether it be protection or search and rescue or drug detection, bomb detection, we make it a game. We make it fun for the dog. So
Okay.
it's not like we're forcing them, making them do this stuff. We're making it fun, rewarding them at the end,
Like
so
it's
we
fun.
can get the most
Like
out
my
of
first
it.
These are dogs that want to do that. They
okay.
they have that drive and they want to do the work. Where sometimes we're handed dogs that someone wants to do the work and, say protection, and they're hiding behind the handler. They don't want anything to do with it. So we
Right.
work them in a certain way to bring out their confidence. And some,
okay.
if it's a police department, we're like, what, this dog's not cut out for it. But if it's,
Okay.
say, someone who wants their dog to be a little more assertive and, protective, then, hey, we'll bring them as
Okay.
far as we can. But it's always thinking of, the dog and being fair to them and, not
Okay.
not
Now,
abusive.
speaking of being fair to the dog, I'm also thinking, sometimes the search, somebody's lost, the Alzheimer's patient who goes wandering off. Sometimes it's like days.
Oh, yeah.
Now, what is the normal shift for a dog to work?
It depends. It depends on who's available, what the weather is. Like with the 9/11 dogs, they weren't finding any live people,
Okay.
so they would set up a game where they'd hide one of the other handlers or one of the firefighters,
Okay.
so the dog would get that fun win to keep them
okay.
up. So there's things like that.
Okay. You know what? We are out of time.
Oh.
I'd like to find out more about that, but I guess we're going to have a sequel.
Right.
So thank you very much for coming.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
And hopefully all of you at home enjoyed tonight's conversation as much as I did, and I'm ready to go out, and I might actually be a dog person. But anyway, thank you very much, and have a great week, and I'll see you around town. Good night.
Sweet.
Yeah, I heard that alarm go off, and I should have not asked that last question. but-
That's a 2-minute buzzer.